You're most welcome to today's episode of Coffee Court. My name is Rona Nahabwe, and with me is Isaac Christopher Lubogo, if I got the name correct. And our topic today is going to be looking around the legal framework surrounding the oil and gas sector. As we all know, we are expecting the first drop of oil by 2025, and this is an interesting topic that every Ugandan or the government or the pillars of the government, as the judicial, executive, and the legislature, are very, expectant of the proceedings of the oil and gas. Can you say hello to the viewers?
Hello viewers, how are you? My name is Isaac Christopher Lubogo. Like my esteemed sister has just said, I am a lawyer. I'm also a lecturer. I wrote on in different jurisdictions. I pride myself in being an author of perhaps 30 books now running, but predominantly I think this is the most important book that has brought us here. This is the book on oil and gas law in Uganda, which is the locus classicus, like we say.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's start with from a lighter note. What was your interest in starting to write about oil and gas?
I think it was Stephen Bako who said, I write what I like. So me, the premise of writing came because I felt there was a gap. They used to say, we have this old adage that if you have something to hide from the black man, you do what? You put it in a book. And I think it was, there's a gentleman who said that they have made black being a disgrace. I intend to make it a virtue. So on my hand, I thought that intellectualism and scholarism can actually be something that the African or the black people can take privy to Europe and even excelling, especially in Uganda where we do not have so many centers for learning or research. So to me, writing comes first of all as a passion, but also as a gift to the world so that people can be able to comprehend and appreciate information. Information that we write will live far much ahead of us even after we have long gone. So writing is a passion, but it's also an extension of trying to help people to appreciate and comprehend knowledge.
Let's look at the national content. I was reading some parts of the book where I saw you wrote something about national content. And I think for every Ugandan, they would be interested how they would feel be able to benefit from this oil and gas. I would like to know, how does the government agree on the binding licensing and say that this is a company you're going to award 20 years of contracting this? How does that even start?
It's a long process. First of all, there is an oil and gas policy for starters. The government came up with an oil and gas policy that governs everything that has to do with oil exploration, as you know, beginning from the first stage, the second stage, to the third stage, as it were. I'm trying to be as simple as possible without using a lot of legal jargon. So predominantly, when you talk about national oil content in terms of exploration, in terms of the drillings and the likes, how beneficial is this oil going to be to the ordinary people? And that's why the national content comes in. We have an act that brings it into resonance. So oil and gas, for purposes of emphasis, should be something that is of interest to our nation because it comes with a lot of revenue. We call it black gold, It comes with a lot of revenue. It has transformed so many states and countries. Talk about most of those Arabian countries. Many of them are thriving in terms of financial excellence, in terms of oil. Even Libya, for example, Gaddafi was able to change his country because of the profits of the oil and gas. If well governed,
yes.
That is the point. If well governed.
I would like to know, still this because that under the government of Uganda say the only way, apart from the host communities, can benefit from this is through linkages, agriculture, accommodation, all these setups are going to be part of the renewable region. Do you think this is viable? Or do you think the revenue is going to bring the host communities, and what if the investors in this part of the country get the money and then they are able to utilize it even more than the host community?
Yes, and that's a very important point. National local oil content becomes a question of importance because at the end of the day, we talk about what they call equitable distribution of these resources. There are countries, for example, those oil-producing countries in Saudi Arabia and the likes, have this element where every individual of the country is a stakeholder in terms of benefit. Every dollar that is built out of that oil becomes a benefit automatically, and they actually get benefits out of it. The question perhaps you're raising is whether or not we have equitable distribution in terms of when it comes to oil and gas, when it comes to revenue. That's a question of debate, because I know for a fact that there are people who call it my oil. I think you probably been on record where people say I am the person who came up with this oil and therefore it is my oil. I also know for a fact that we have a problem of corruption in this country, and the corruption goes to the root of the problem. Do we have enough sandbags perhaps to protect, in terms of protecting the common person, like you like to say, who is way back in the Albert and Robin area? Are they able to benefit directly from the fruits or from the resources that are going coming out of the oil and gas, revenues, if you like? I will say yes, in the law it is there. Practical is the other question. It may be there in the law, it may be enforceable in terms of the law, but do we have the will, the spirit, the will to enforce the spirit and letter of the law? Perhaps that's the bigger question again that I ask me.
And that's particularly good. We think Uganda is comfortable in your opinion.
They have no choice. What do? He who has that proverb, he who has the pipe calls the what? The tune. At the end of the day, you see, even before you begin exploration, you have to go way back and get money from World Bank and IMF. World Bank and IMF has given us money in respect to that, to remember. Yeah. And they are saying we have to actually remit a certain percentage to them for purposes of again sandbagging ourselves, which I think is true. And some countries have been doing it. So even before we begin thinking about whether or not we are enjoying this 15%, the question is, do we have these so-called big brothers, bullies, for lack of a better word, who come in and say, if you don't play games this way, then I'm not going to do that. Because as a country, Uganda, we may not have the capacity. I mean, I've asked myself, if we have now talking about this pipeline, the old pipeline way back, where I just go way back up to Tanzania, you know, on the shores, and they're saying we're going to export that crude oil. Questions could arise, why don't you do a refinery here? Those are questions you ask yourself. But again, as I said, if you are that poor and you don't even have the resources to begin exploring oil yourself, and you're still dependent on those so-called countries which are giving you the donations in terms of grants and stuff like that, and this will come in terms of loans, you know, which we have to pay back at a certain time, then you find yourself in a country, in a problem. It's a serious dilemma as a country. So perhaps the bigger question would be, do we have sufficient guidelines, provisions in terms of the law that would help us to really benefit equitably as a nation, but also as individuals, not only as Minyolo, by the way, because we may be excited about urban and urban area and say, okay, it's only the Minyolo people. But I think for all intents and purposes, it should be broader in terms of the bigger country. You and I may not come from Minyolo, but are we excited about what's going to happen in Minyolo? Are we going to benefit from the resources that are going to come from Minyolo? Those are the questions perhaps that will win the day, if you like.
Let's talk about the imports. We all know that imports from petroleum products going to be the largest import bill. And do you think once we have the resources here and we are able to even have a refinery here and then we can process our own oil from crude to the refined oil, do you think it is going to affect the prices here?
Yes.
Because I had a conversation with one and they said if you are able to reduce the prices of inflation, then that means we are going to attract people from outside to come and then buy this fuel and sell it outside at a higher price. Like they are maximizing the profit more than us.
Yeah, you see, when you talk about issues to do with price determination, price setting and the likes, as I said, the organization, international consortiums that actually govern price, sales of oil and gas. You, as a country who is just beginning to think of exploring, is competing with a country which has done it for over 10, 20 years. You know, with better benefits, with better bargaining skills, and better, market. They know the market perhaps much better than you. So the question you're asking is, if I don't think as a country we have even a sole determinant of what price this oil is going to run at, because we have to depend on those big consortiums that have already been in the game, the OPEC lights and the like. So the question is in terms of whether or not we have enough capacity to pull it off as individuals. That's the problem that we have. We are excited about the oil, we're excited about the rebates that are going to happen, but I don't think we're in a position to give ourselves that, we're going to cut our cake this way. Because already, as I told you, there are already determinants who have been in the field for a longer time, who have bigger muscles and bigger pulling powers. Oil and gas, as I said, is extremely valuable. It has a lot of resources that's likely to pull for this country, but it has also got backfires. Maybe later you will probably go to ask me about things to do with the resource cost and the Dutch diseases. and stuff like that. Those components, and whether or not we have got substantive or even provisional laws that have got safeguards to protect against issues to do with corruption and the likes.
No, I think it's a process by process, because I remember last year, the Ministry of Finance launched a charter, a public charter where all these finances are going to be managed, and they are very transparent about it. So I think by the time 2025 comes, they will be able to come up with a bigger framework, like say, that reflects these resources to the full team. But maybe to talk about your book and in fact in it, I would like to know about the market consortiums. What influences them? What influences what happens there in regards to OPEC, these countries that have been there, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Angola? What lies there? What exactly is the piece?
You see, the biggest challenge you have is, first of all, is the Africanization of some of our products. You'll ask me, what does that mean? By Africanization is that in most cases we have a tendency, even as Africans, by the way, we have a tendency of not believing in ourselves and not even perhaps making our products marketable so that they can be able to compete. At a later time, I know you probably ask me about the kind of oil that we have. There is a difference between the kind of oil that we have is actually sweet oil. You'll argue and say, what is sweet oil? In terms of the density, the ability for you to make better products in terms of what? Inflammability, if you like. And those are arguments that can be propounded by people who have a stronger bargaining tool in terms of, first of all, the finances, but in terms of also the brain. You know, recently, and they were talking about even agreements in terms of which entities are actually running this on your behalf. I know Sinop, for example, and others like Total and like have had issues with us. The Chinese perhaps now have the lion's share in terms of oil explorations. But every time it comes to that, you know there are connotations and there are strings attached. So again, this begs the question of whether or not we as a country are in position to safeguard and promote our oil so that everyone can actually benefit equitably. You know, so that's the other question that we need to ask ourselves, even as people who are excited about what's going to happen to oil tomorrow.
But what do you think influences the decisions and the prices in the newspaper firms, like OPEC or the big basket?
As I say, the bigger bodies who have been in the experience for long, they have the better one, they have actually the reserves, they have resources, you know, they are not depending on someone to explore oil, they have their own companies that run their own businesses. So those are going to they're going to be the movers and the shakers. For you, you act on behalf of them. You are actually getting people to come and run things on your behalf. You understand? You have to hire experts to act. So there are commissions that are going to be given to them. So again, those who have the lion's share will determine.
Do you think the meter regulations relates to this?
Meter regulations has to do with how an entity can be able to govern its own organization. These are regulations that you may come up as an organization and say, these organizations, what happens is that government gives you mandate to make laws or regulations to govern, self-govern. The only thing that government does is to be on the outlook and say, I'm not going to interfere, but I'll be able to watch and see that actually what you say you're going to do in the regulations you're actually doing. So that's what meter regulations are. So that they are provided for in the law, and that's also a good thing that we need to look at. The other thing that had to do with perhaps where you ought to have asked me a little bit had to do with the whole stabilization clauses. Again, which are also important in terms of contractual licensing, call them. We have what they call production sharing agreements, which we have. You talked about transparency, and that kind of piqued my ear. I'm like, transparency? Are you sure about transparency? Is there transparency in oil and gas as far as Uganda is concerned? Many people ask things to do with production sharing agreements. I have a privilege of examining oil and gas at master's level. And some of the students who come to me, there was a time when we had a debate which had to do with production sharing agreement. And we asked the students, can you actually at very last, you are making an argument in terms of production sharing agreement for Uganda, and they're saying it is substantive enough, it's equitable enough. Do you have a copy of it? Can you avail it to us? Parliament has said this is public information, but if I ask you, share me, give it me, none of you. I have samples of it here, but those are basically more like drafts. So we don't even know what is exactly inside those agreements. So even before we begin arguing about equitability, price selection and stuff like that, there are bigger questions to ask as far as transparency is concerned.
In regards to resource utilization, now we have seen countries like Nigeria having their own national radio stations, where the regulator owns these radio stations. How do you think that can be achieved?
It is a possibility, yes, and it happens. Shell does it, BP does it, Total does it, and other Oxel and stuff like that. They do it. That's possible. Yes, those explorers can actually run their own, oil stuff and stuff like that. And like rightly pointed out, Nigeria is probably the best example that has some of those components. The bigger question perhaps is if we don't have checks and balances. If you are the person who's cooking the food in the kitchen, serving it, perhaps even giving it to respective people, then the question is, everything's going to be dependent upon you. You're going to have a problem in terms of equitable distribution, even price determination, because you will not have a check and balance. That's the problem that is likely to come in terms of the equitableness of price selection or even determination. They can decide to say, let's lower down the production because we want the price to go up. You saw what happened in the Ukraine war, how the prices, shook us up because Russia, as a major, producer of oil and gas, had issues, and that trickled down to Africa, to you and I in terms of the expenses. So, like I said, there's a danger in that if those companies that have the mandate to do that are given the mandate to explore and do whatever they do, then we're going to have a problem. Perhaps the rescue would be in terms of stabilization clauses, like I said, which will be envisaged in these contractual agreements that are proposed or that we sign with these organizations or whatever, so that they have what they call stabilization clauses and say we can only operate within these margins.
You mentioned something in the book in regards to which diseases. So what do you make of that?
Dutch disease is the negative effect of resource scarcity. Dutch disease is basically over-reliance on the products or produce or the revenues that come out of the oil exploration. We get excited and say, we have struck gold, we have struck back gold. Now we have it all. So what happens? We neglect every other section and concentrate on what? On oil and gas. And we neglect vital areas like healthcare, vital areas like education. That is what they call the Dutch disease. So,
do you think it's possible for a country like that?
yes and no. Yes, if we have the will and the right people selected to do the job, we can do that. No, if we still have this idea of saying it is my oil, if we still have this idea of corruption in the country.
Maybe as we wind up and get close to the end of this conversation, I would like to know your mind, your mind in regards to the quality of the oil. We have seen UAPs come out and say some of your oil is poor, hard, dialogues with the tar, shell. Your oil is substandard. But now we're going to have our own oil. How do you think we're going to bridge that gap of having the quality oil as we need?
Like I said, the bigger countries, the bigger police in most cases have already their price determined. They have better quality oil in the sense that they have actually existed for a long period of time, and therefore they can be able to, govern and keep the market. Total, Shell, and the likes. The question now we have is that other petrol stations, for example, petrol stations, that, like you said, give poor quality oil. They do it because of the competition. You're dealing with a person who has been there for over many years, who has the capacity to supply as much as possible, who has subcontracted almost the entire world and knows where the oil is. And you, who's just beginning, cannot compete with them favorably because you're putting in too much. So what happens? You're tempted to do what? What's the word? To adulterate the oil so that you reduce on its quality, thinking you are actually you want to make money, but you're actually killing your product in the end. That's why I'm sure there are certain places where you would want to fill your car with gasoline because you're sure maybe I can only go to Total or Shell. I'm not sure about these others because their oil is adulterated and therefore cannot work well. And that's why UNDS is coming up with those provisions and saying, wait a minute, let's check on the quality of oil. That comes because of the competition. That comes because of the bigger person who's perhaps enjoying even subsidies or even enjoying tax exemptions or even has made his way out. That's the point that brings about that issue.
Your final remarks with regards to this conversation, legal framework, and with regards to oil and gas?
My final remarks is that you are living in yesterday's world, and that is my disappointment. I would have expected you to ask me in terms of the future. Right now we are transcending. If you see one of that book there, that green book, it's called Sustainable Renewable Environmental Law. Now what we need to talk about, even countries like Qatar, by the way, are now thinking beyond oil and gas. Here in Uganda we're excited about oil and gas. People are thinking past oil and gas. They are thinking past renewable. They're talking about renewable energy. They're talking about blue economies. They're talking about hydrocarbon economies. They're talking about issues that address issues where the ocean loses their memory. They're talking about things to do with methane. They're talking about solar energy. They're talking about geothermal. They're talking about hydropower. Those sustainable energies are the things that I think we should be substantively focusing on. I got a call recently from an engineer who's doing research for the president. He told me I'm talking about hydropower, hydrocarbon, energy in terms of sustainability. Clean energy is the point.
Many ministers has allocated, they want to start investing in it. So that is another part of the energy. But of course, for today, we are looking at oil and gas. And if you pick your mind, since you've been writing about it.
Absolutely. And the beauty about it is that I've talked about it here in terms of the way forward. But you see, if you wait for something to happen, it's not a good thing. You need to prepare. So even as we're transiting, the oil and gas is a good experience. We have to learn from the bad experiences, like I said, the resource gas, learn from the good countries like Norway have done it well, and then also prepare ourselves for a transition into better oil and even sustainable energies, like I say. So to me, I think that will be a better story for us as a country, even as an entity in terms of oil and gas exploration. And also decommissioning, by the way. You did ask about decommissioning.
What about it?
Decommissioning is a very important aspect because after we explore the oil, there are countries that are now crying tears because they don't have substantive or effective decommissioning provisions. When you've done the oil away, how about oil spills? How about challenges of whether or not these oils can actually, how about the community around? How about socio-economic impact on the community of exploration? There's going to be an influx of foreigners, issues to do with the girl child, issues to do with land acquisition. So there are many things we can talk about.
We can always talk about that, and of course, we have 25 minutes or 30, we can have a prolonged conversation. Interesting, there, of course, a conversation with Mr. Isaac Christopher
Lubogo. Yes.
We do know that in the past has held suppliers workshops, has brought in experts from Nigeria and other countries that have been already trading with us oil and gas, and they are hoping for a young country like Uganda that is new in this field. They are trying to get the expertise it can need, and I hope they are able to get the right information so that this revenue at the end of the day remains in the country. As always, my name is Jonah Nahabwe, and thank you for the pleasure of your time. Have a good night.